Hey everybody, welcome into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for Snap Judgments on a Wednesday night. It's time to get into it, the final media availability with the players of the week. I've got a handful of those Buckeyes after practice tonight, so Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham, and myself, Austin Ward, we're going to dive right into it. Bill, you bopped around there. You got the recorders down. You got some info. What did we learn tonight?
You'll be shocked to hear that I spent the majority of my time at Luke Wypler's table. He was the only offensive lineman who was out here speaking on Wednesday evening. They feel pretty good about where they are with the short yardage run game. So, I mean, I guess if they didn't, they wouldn't say it. But he was projecting a lot of confidence, I think, in that. That's like, if I were making a list of my biggest questions for this game, that's pretty high up there, I think, is whether or not they're going to be successful in those kind of situations. He said they repped it a lot, like way more than they did last year. They had dedicated periods to it, which I think is something new for them. It's obviously been a major point of emphasis, and he feels like they got the kind of work done that they needed to. He was also asked about, I guess, one of the defensive linemen at Notre Dame used some colorful language to describe how good they are. And Luke was asked, like, hey, did you see this? And Luke was just like, yeah, we saw it. And then, like, kind of didn't bite it, didn't take the bait on the bulletin board material, but they're aware of it.
A little profanity popping up at Notre Dame this week. We're actually talking about that on the podcast daily tomorrow with John Bryce. Stay tuned for that conversation about just anything goes apparently at Notre Dame media availability. That sounds fun. Back to your other point about what you asked Luke. I think it's interesting to compare the answers at the start of camp throughout camp, and I think early on, whenever we had the offensive line day with Luke Wypler and some others, there was a little bit of defensiveness. Like we ran the ball at a very high level. Ohio State had success. Like, how can you say that we weren't good running the football? And this was a more, I think, honest approach than that one earlier. Maybe it was just the way you worded the question or talked about it. I don't know. But he was like, well, you can't fix a problem unless you recognize that there is a problem. And I didn't think that initially the offensive line was as willing to accept that doesn't mean that we all thought that they sucked.
Yeah.
Like, it was just something that they didn't do as well as they could have last year.
The one thing that Luke said that I sorry to cut you off, Bern, but that
please do. I don't have anything to say.
It was when you're so good, it always feels like we're nitpicking, and in some respects we are. But Luke was asked, like, what tells you that you could have been a little better last year? And he said very simply, we did not hoist the trophy in the middle of January. And I think that's the bottom line. They know there's just, at least on that side of the ball, there are little areas here and there where they got to get a little bit better.
With Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who we got a chance to talk to tonight, said the same thing last week. If they don't win a national championship, this season is a failure, essentially. And I think that the only way Ohio State loses on Saturday, if we're going to get down into the minutia of the season, is if the Ohio State offensive line doesn't dominate the Notre Dame interior defensive line. I think that's the bottom line for Saturday night. So to have Luke Wypler out here, I would like to talk to DeJuan Jones and Matthew Jones, and I'd like to talk to Donovan Jackson. I want to know how confident those guys are going into that, because that Notre Dame defensive line does have a lot of confidence, and this team is not going to come out and beat their chest and say, oh, we're way better than we were. But if they're not better than they were, that's how Saturday night becomes a game that's a lot closer than the 17.5 points that Vegas thinks it's going to be.
I think that's the only unit versus unit matchup where you look at it and say, well, as to your point, Berm, what could change that spread? It's if Notre Dame's defensive line is more successful against the Ohio State offensive line than most people expect that they will be. Now, is that the most even one on the field? Probably,
yeah.
If we're looking at it honestly and objectively, that's got to be it. They've got a chance to create some problems there. You wouldn't think that their linebackers are going to have a field day with Ohio State's tight ends or match up well with Treveyon Henderson or Miyan Williams, and certainly their secondary has virtually no shot, in my opinion, of slowing down Ohio State's wide receivers and C.J. Stroud. So where will it be determined? If Marcus Freeman was right about this earlier in the week, it's going to come down to Ohio State's ability to run the ball and get the tough yards and short yardage that Luke Wypler's talking about them having to get on Saturday.
I think there were some technical things I think that they wanted to work on in this offseason, and Ryan Day's talked about that a little bit. I think Justin Fry has as well. But more than anything, I think like it's about sort of being about that life when the time comes, and I don't know that they always they were not. I think when the chips were down last year, so that's
my favorite Jack Harlow.
You know that I got here a little late this evening because Ohio State decided to move the time up a half hour. I have a drive to get here, so I got in here.
He's going full disclosure on here. America, listen up.
I got in here a few minutes late, America, and I'm sorry. So I did miss the availability of Treveyon Henderson and Miyan Williams. I did, however, get to speak to Cade Stover for a minute and Tommy Eichenberg for a minute. And those guys both
America, Kate Stover wasn't even available.
Those guys both
Hustle.
said pretty explicitly they know Notre Dame is going to come out in that first quarter and try to punch them in the face. And that's what Michigan did. That's what Utah did. Now, Ohio State got up off the mat against Utah. They did not against Michigan. It sounds like cliche. We've talked about it all offseason. If they're tough, they're going to win this game on Saturday. If they're not tough, then you're going to see a lot of the same things you saw a year ago. I don't think anyone expects that, but at the same time, it's the first game of the year, and you just really can't bet on anything at this point. So,
you can definitely.
You can bet. Spread is 17.5.
I can bet on the fact that Cade Stover is going to hit someone as hard as he possibly can on Saturday early in the game to just make sure he gets woken up. And Tommy Eichenberg seems extremely razor-focused.
He sure was. That was not the most loquacious media availability of the season.
No.
He was. I don't remember who asked this question. It doesn't matter because it could have been one that I asked or anybody else. The answer would have been the same. So Jim Knowles said on Tuesday that you guys are 100% ready. Where do you think this defense is? And Tommy said 100%. The end.
Yeah.
No more, I guess, needs to be said.
I respect it.
If you put a number on it.
If you're going to ask Tommy Eichenberg, which basically is a yes or no question,
you're going to get
a yes or no answer.
Get the yes or no answer.
Yeah, that's a guy who you need to have a few open-ended questions with, you know?
Yeah, so I did ask him to describe the chemistry between he and Steel Chambers on the field and how that can translate. Bill wrote about, Steel Chambers and the emergence that he can have this year after a full season at linebacker. I think it's the tandem of those two that puts them in line to do a lot of things statistically that can potentially win awards. I know Berm had made a bold prediction about that happening. Mm-hmm. If they're on the field a lot and extremely confident in each other, and their communication skills between the two of those linebackers are far better than what they like to bring out to the Woody for a media availability, I think that'll go a long way. And it's also something that has been talked about throughout camp when you've looked at Jim Knowles' system. If you leave those linebackers out there to play a high volume of snaps and they're able to get into that flow of the game and all those other things that go along with familiarity of what you're seeing and personnel, and that can be pretty prolific potentially for Ohio State.
Yeah, as I was writing about Steel Chambers, I did not come fully around to the idea that he's going to win the Buckeyes Award. That's still, but that's the point of making a bold prediction. But yeah, right. But he's going to have what I think is going to be a really productive season because of the nature of this defense. And as much as we talk about the safeties with this defense, you guys know it's a safety-driven defense.
What's that? Safety-driven.
Safety-driven defense. A lot is expected of the linebackers in this system, the way, at least how he did it at Oklahoma State. Maybe he'll change it here and it'll look different on Saturday, but I'm not expecting it. The way they especially defend the run, they want that defensive line to spill everything to the outside, and those linebackers have to kill it. Like, that's the job of them in this defense.
Spill and kill.
Spill and kill. Yeah, that is what it's called. And that's why those guys, that's why the two linebackers at Oklahoma State last year accounted for like 300 tackles. Not quite that many. It was like 230. But it was a lot. It was a lot. Those guys are going to have a lot on their shoulder. Like, I don't think it's an overly complicated position in this defense, but when that play gets spilled to you, you better be ready to take it down because there's not a whole lot of help behind you.
There are so few positions on this team where there were legitimate question marks last year, but those positions that had the question marks had big, bold question marks. Like, what the hell is happening at this position?
Sure.
If Ohio State's going to be successful on Saturday night, they're going to have to stop the run as much as they're going to have to run the ball. Nobody's going to be more important than Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers on Saturday because Audric Estime, the running back at Notre Dame, they're going to try to get Tyler Buckner out and move him around a little bit. That game plan almost revolves entirely around those two guys being able to step up and stop those plays because it's going to be the safety-driven defense that has to stop Michael Mayer and the passing game. So I just think it's hard to understate how important Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers are because they are the clear-cut best two linebackers on this team. And if those two can't get it done on Saturday, then there's problems, and that they're season-long problems.
Safety-driven defense, you say? That's news to me.
It's the new craze everyone's talking about.
Is that just like how Ohio State just started watching film with Notre Dame today?
That's right, yeah. Important information we got confirmed. Jaxon Smith-Njigba has, in fact, watched film with Notre Dame.
Obviously, we are going to do a bold predictions on Friday for the actual game itself.
Of course we are.
I think.
Is that your bold prediction? Is that we're going to do bold predictions?
But should we? I'd like to hear. I've already said my concerns are stopping the run and being able to punch them in the mouth. What is your biggest potential stumbling block for Ohio State on Saturday?
I mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bill. I was gonna steal yours. So,
I mean, those are.
Sure.
If I were to,
but I already claimed those.
Yeah. If I were to pick something different, it would be pass protection. Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones being able to handle Isaiah Foskey, who is a first-round talent. Like, I don't know. He's like an all-world type of player? I don't think so, but he's a pretty solid pass rusher. He was really productive last year. He's going to be really productive again this year. If he's able to bother C.J. Stroud a little bit, that would be a concern of mine.
Yeah, the more that I look at it, and I touched on it when we started Snap Judgments, the Luke Wypler and how that whole offensive line handles that matchup with the defensive line. I don't look anywhere else on the roster, and I've said it all week. 1 through 85, I don't think there's any comparison between Ohio State and Notre Dame. Who would you take off of Notre Dame right now, Bill, Berm, either one, that you'd say they're definitely going to start at Ohio State? Like,
Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah.
Kyle Hamilton.
He's gone.
What?
And I'm not sure that he would anyway.
Michael Mayer is the only.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, so that's it. And that means, so what does that mean? Everyone talks about Notre Dame's offensive line, but if you wouldn't even take one of those guys, and I know that their best one is banged up this week, then again, Ohio State still has the advantage over what they're facing, in my opinion. I'm not saying that to say that an upset is impossible on Saturday night. Just think, if Ohio State plays its best game or even its B game at every unit, there's not something, in my opinion, that should trip them up unless they're careless with the football, which Treveyon Henderson has not been. C.J. Stroud had that a couple of times. So, like, let's say, I talked about it 2 weeks ago, his decision-making. If that's taken the next step, which we don't know 100%, maybe that would be it if I had to say it. If they get tripped up, if he forces the ball into coverage, tries to rely on his arm strength too much or any of that stuff, maybe you give them a chance. You don't turn the football over and you protect. Ohio State should win this game easily.
That outside of the generic matchups between offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, Notre Dame running game, I think that is the thing. If Ohio State comes out and is a little bit over amped and tries to force some things, and you see CJ making plays like he did at Nebraska last year, which I don't think that's in his DNA. I don't think that was like he was trying to be a gunslinger. I think he was just trying to push because the offense was struggling. I think as long as Ohio State's even on turnovers or in -1, I think they win this game.
If they're even, they're leaving.
If they're even, they're leaving. If they're -1, they'll get the job
done.
They're
having fun.
If they're -2, people are going to
boo.
Yeah.
Where's the glue? I don't know what
it's a horse factory.
I don't know. I didn't want to. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't want to
the
say
glue
it.
at the horseshoe.
Maybe I don't know why I said that.
PETA is going to be pissed.
Don't shut us down, please.
PETA, we're sorry.
Anything
other
else?
than that, no. I mean,
Okay.
I think that we've talked so much, and I appreciate everyone who's watching the podcast daily, watching our Snap Judgments, staying with us as we've kind of been pulling our own hair out, trying to find stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
So thank you for your patience. But we're like 48 hours from Saturday.
Yeah, I think
I'm pretty stoked.
When I'm at the point where you just ask the players, they're tired of hitting each other. We're tired of asking them about practice. Jaxon Smith-Njigba said that those nerves are starting to come up, and that's also the time where we're about out of ways to break down this game. But guess what? We're still going to on Thursday.
I've got nerves.
And Friday.
I've got nerves coming. Those are good. I like the
I
nerves.
think it doesn't have to be nervousness.
No,
it's just excitement. It's juice.
It's nervousness.
Oh, okay.
Is it for the Jack Harlow concert or?
Oh yeah, I just got to figure out how early I have to leave.
Did you place a bet on what his opening song is going to be?
No.
Is that why you're nervous?
I got to figure out what time I have to leave on Saturday morning to get to game day set to make sure I, have my Jack Harlow sign. So, well, I was going to say I love you, Jack.
That's
Bill hates Bryce Harper. I love Jack Harlow. Bill hates Bryce Harper. That's my sign.
Those are good signs.
Yeah.
I hope
it's one sign.
I hope they don't get cough. Oh, it's all in one sign.
Yeah,
that might be too small.
My font is going to be exceedingly small, but we're gonna make it work. Anyway, thank you seriously, folks, for staying with us. We tweeted it out from the main account the other day. We've been online with the podcast for about a month, and it has been an absolutely incredible first month. So thank you all very much. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, so we'll have the podcast daily, Thursday and Friday. We will have some sort of reaction if needed after Ryan Day's lightning round on Thursday. We have a weekend kickoff show.
Talking stuff.
Talking Stuff is coming hot.
On Thursday.
That's coming on Thursday as well. Look for that. There was a Brock Glenn Bermanology, for those of you who didn't see that on Wednesday. Bold predictions and a weekend kickoff show. New format this year. Look for that
And then
also
there's a
on
football
Friday
game.
morning. And then, then maybe we'll have some snappy Jays
Neat.
after Ohio State Notre Dame on Saturday night in the Horseshoe.
Good chance.
I think that covers it. All right, that's Bill Burm. I'm Austin. We'll see you tomorrow.